Hello and welcome to Quartzlight, your car brochure channel. In today's episode, we'll be looking at the Saab 95 and 96 V4 for 1970. Hello and welcome back, and if you're new to Quartzlight, we're a car brochure channel here on YouTube looking at car brochures from the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s. So if you think that might interest you, please consider subscribing, it really does help. Now today's episode we'll be looking at the Saab 95 and 96 V4 for 1970. So let's jump right into this brochure and have a look at this lovely brochure. I always like the Saab brochures because the photography is always really nice. So here we go, a lovely brochure, and like I say, a lovely photography straight away. A really nice image of this red 96 here. Top says Saab V4 96 sedan, 95 station wagon, 1970. And yeah, the only difference between the 96 and the 95 was, your 95 was your estate version, your 96 was your standard saloon. And these are the V4s. We often think about Saab 96s being more famous for those little two-stroke engines, but here we've got the four-stroke models. The 96 was launched around about 1960. It ran all the way till 1980. So it was a very successful car for Saab. And like we say here, V4, we are only looking at those four-cylinder cars today. And interestingly, the four-cylinder model came out around about 1967, when it was actually sold alongside the two-stroke. So for that year you could choose if you wanted a two-stroke or a four-stroke model. The choice was entirely yours, and then in 68 they decided, let's just continue with this V4 model. In fact, I do have a Saab 96 brochure for 67. This is a 67 year brochure, and if I just go to the back, I'll be able to show you that it's showing both models. So there we go, both the two-stroke, what it's referring to as the Shrike engine, guaranteed for a lifetime, kind of like old telling you how simple and effective that little engine is, and then the option of this V4 engine, more power to you. But back to 1970 now, and yes, you could only get that V4 engine, which was incidentally a Ford Taunus V4 engine. Zoom in on that main picture now. I always really liked the design of the 96. I did own a 96 actually, because I really liked the design, and they've got that little bit of a rally heritage. It wasn't just the simple two strokes that had a lot of rally success. These V4s also had some rally success as well, but like I say, the design is just such a beautiful design, and they are really strong, heavy, well built cars actually. They were quite an interesting cars to own. I really do wish I had one now. You can certainly see some of the differences though between this 1970 model and the earlier one, that 67. I'll just pan back a little bit. You can see the sort of metal grille instead of this looks like chrome. It was very plasticky actually, that chrome, I seem to remember on mine. Mine was actually a 73 model. You can also see these big chrome bumpers and these chrome overriders. They had a little bit of rubber on the front on these later ones, as you can see, and I always remember taking this bumper off a 96 and it was incredibly heavy. Really amazing what heavy materials they actually used. Incidentally, I know I'm just wittering on the front cover a little bit, but this is 1970, and you can see by 70 they changed this chrome overrider completely to a rubber overrider, and my 73 had those rubber overriders. In fact, later on, 75, these went to a whole sort of like very similar to the 99 actually, just a black plastic bumper, thinking more impact absorption, of course. So they did change the bumper styles. I know I'm kind of like wittering on, but I do like these 96s, and I used to be really into them at one time. Anyway, let's go back to that 1970 brochure and have a look inside. And as we turn the page, we get this lovely example of this beige coloured one from the side. I always really like this sort of like teardrop type design. Really design harking back to the original Saabs actually, and the Saab 99s were a big change. Of course the Saab 99 were actually sold alongside the 96 in the 70s. Now this is a US brochure. It is a brochure that's printed in Sweden, but it is an American brochure, so there are some kind of like American spec differences. There's a little bit of a light on the back, or a reflector. Don't remember mine having that in the UK, so I think that might have been more to do with the North American market. But an interesting looking car. Saab badges on there, V4 badge on the side, and these very unusual rubbing strips going down the side. Incidentally, I mean, everyone talks about Saab being very well built. They last forever. Mine was a very poor example, and I can tell you now, they did rust very badly in places. I think it rusted so much around the wing that actually these lights actually fell out on mine, and they rusted at the bottom. They rusted on top of these rear wings. So they did have rust issues. Mine certainly had a lot of rust issues, but the thing was, it was actually a very solid car. There was some really solid metal in there, so there were opportunities to weld them for sure. We turn the page now, we get some really nice images of both the 95 estate and the 96 now, and some text. We'll read some of the text before moving on to these images. It starts by saying aesthetics alone aren't responsible for the good looks of the Saab 94 exterior. For the low, rounded front and sharply raked windshield, the softly bulging sides, the shape is also dictated by the laws of aerodynamics. The fact is, Saab is also one of the major manufacturers of advanced jet aircraft in Europe, and we've applied a lot of what we learned in the making of our planes to the making of our cars. Aerodynamic design is what makes the Saab V4 so steady on the road, regardless of winds from front or side. The air resistance coefficient is as low as 0.37, a very low figure. It goes on to tell us about the V4 engine with 73 horsepower gives Saab its quick acceleration and the ability to maintain a high, even speed of over 85 miles per hour, and top speed is considerably higher, although it doesn't tell us, weirdly enough. There is kind of like this strange sort of freewheel drive system actually on these 96s, which it mentions here. The freewheel drive is a detail at Saab's all alone. When the gas pedal is released, so in effect is the engine. This has two advantages: safer driving on slippery roads and lower gas consumption. Since the clutch doesn't have to be used, downshifting is fast and simple. A few sort of like moody on the beach pictures. I always wonder who gets these cars after these brand new cars are run on the beach and next to the salt water, which I presume it is. But there we go. There is our first glimpse of the 95 with that unusual sort of almost fin-like rear. A little bit of a look at the side. I always remember very well those hubcaps. They were like, even the hubcaps felt quite heavy and very well made, incidentally. A little bit of a speed shot. Our first glimpse of the interior, which was actually very, very black, obviously, very dull, but you know, it was all plasticky, but even the plastic felt like really hard wearing material, and the switchgear was all, you know, felt nice actually. And then finally the rear with that strange light, which, like I say, I presume is it a reflector? I'm not sure, but it's certainly more of a North American spec thing. And looking at that bumper, you can even imagine how heavy them bumpers are. And going back to that funny little light at the side there, I mean, that might not even be a North American thing, but I would imagine it would be on the North American cars. But ultimately this brochure was produced in Sweden, so it may have been an extra little bit of a reflector or light that might have been needed for the Swedish market. Interesting, comfortable actually seats in the Saab 96. This one's even showing rear seat belts. I'm pretty sure mine didn't have rear seat belts in it, but there we go. Nice of them to show a picture of that, considering this is 1970. Very functional dashboard, like I say, with a bit of a grab handle on there. More nice images now, and we'll certainly zoom in on that dashboard. A little bit of a reflection from the page itself. I mean, the quality of the brochure is really high on these Saab brochures. I always find that every time I look at them. The pictures are really nice, they're really sharp. Bit of a glossy page, but other than that, really nice quality pictures. I always remember this huge steering wheel. It was really a big steering wheel, as a lot of older cars were, of course. And these very simple to use switch gear, simple to read gauges, strange little vents with just this little tiny hole, which I always found was a little bit unusual. These nice red seats actually, and I look at these gauges, and you know, I spent a lot of time looking at these gauges. They were very clear gauges for sure. Also, just quickly going back to these dials, I just kind of like forgot about this. I had this little image of a Saab and that aircraft design again, which is quite nice, isn't it? Going back to this little thing here, which we haven't really mentioned, just a reminder that it was actually column change. Just about see the column change lever there. Wasn't it? I've never been a huge fan of column change, I must admit. I always preferred a floor change, but that's how it came. Look at these very simple sort of like rocker switches. An example in red. I always think they really suited being red. Mine was actually yellow, but I think they always really suited being in red. And a little bit of a look at the ventilation system. Next page shows a very unusual styling of the 95 with these wings and this unusual door arrangement here as well. Certainly in contrast, I always preferred the 96, I must admit, the styling of the 96, that sort of more of a aerodynamic shape, but this is certainly a very interesting design for sure. And the next page is really going into detail, you know, the advantages of getting the estate, much more useful load space. I mean, the boot in the 96 wasn't that big, to be honest. You could even get these sort of seats in the back for children to face the opposite way. It's like a little bit of a under storage area with a glimpse of that green 95 seat area. And then finally this sort of luggage area really shown off to its best ability. Folding the seats down. I really like, in fact I always like the mud flaps on these 70s Saabs. They look quite amazing with the aircraft on there as well. But you can certainly see the quality in it, and I think that's the key to these Saabs. Just the sheer quality. Even in the pictures you can see what great quality these cars were, and it's a shame really Saab isn't a company with us anymore building these high quality vehicles. A little idea, and I really look at it, it's that streamlined shape of the 96. You know, all over teenagers seem to always want Ford Escorts. When I was a teenager, I always wanted a Saab 96, and that's why I ended up with a Saab 96 as a teenager. Unfortunately, I didn't have much money, so it was a very poor example. I think I had around, I don't know, £200 for it or something. I had it for a few years, but I always wished I had the opportunity to buy a really nice example. And then we get an image of that 4-cylinder V4 engine with the 73 horsepower from the Ford Taunus. And I'm not sure what it's kind of like showing. There's probably some kind of like testing going on of the V4. Hubcaps lost somewhere in the testing. A little bit of a look at the mechanicals. And then this page is showing some of the practicality. So the 96, blue showing the boot space. You can fold the seats down even on the saloon version to give you more space. This is obviously the 95, and another little image of the 95 showing you that increased boot space and also that ability to put someone facing the opposite way, although there wasn't that much space in there, so it would have to be someone quite small, I'm suggesting. Not so sure what this is trying to show us here. A bit of a strengthening beam by the looks of it. As the camera goes out of focus, bit of a strengthening beam, I'm assuming, for in case of rollovers. And Saab was very much in that sort of vein as Volvo, trying to make cars as safe as possible. I also remember there was also a strengthening beam that went across the engine compartment. This particular picture's trying to show you ventilation, of course, but they were kind of like a metal beam that actually went across the engine compartment as well to make it an even stronger vehicle. Back page is specifications, so let's zoom in on those. Specifications: Saab 96 sedan and Saab 95 station wagon, 1970, and that 1498cc 4-stroke V4 type engine, 4 cylinders, of course. A lot of information. I'm not going to read all that information, but of course you can pause it if you do want to look at all the information there. Automatic choke. Transmission is front wheel drive, and it's got that weird freewheeling system on there. I don't think I ever actually used the freewheel system. Actually, I just kind of left it in normal manual transmission mode, I seem to remember. Suspension, wheels and tyres, and brakes. Like I say, disc brakes front, drum brakes rear. Further information before it starts moving on to the steering. The electrical system, 12 volt, of course. Some of the dimensions, which goes on and on, doesn't it? And then some of the what it refers to as safety features. Obviously the safety features aren't anything like the safety features on cars today, and it does actually go into great detail about the safety features. That again goes on and on. I'm not going to read all that, but I will move the screen down in a moment if you do want to read all of it. Like I said, by today's standards, they weren't anywhere near as safe as today's standards, but by the 1970s, I think they were certainly ahead of their time in safety. Very much, like I say, similar sort of vein to how Volvo went, making their cars as safe as they possibly could for the time. Like I say, all this is under safety features apparently. I think, I don't know how much splash guards you could refer to as being safety systems, but there we go. So no colour chart on this brochure, but it just gives you an idea of what colours, the exterior colours, and what colour in turn your upholstery would be. So for example, a white exterior colour would have a red interior, black would have a red interior, etc, etc, etc. And then it moves on to tell you what the 95 station wagon had, and it's telling you actually the 95 station wagon just had black vinyl on all the cars, no matter what your body colour was. So you can see obviously the 95 was more your utilitarian vehicle, where your 96 was a little bit fancier, I guess, although my 96 certainly just had black vinyl upholstery on that yellow example. What else have we got down here? We've got a little bit of address. Obviously this is a US brochure, so it's a US address, but if I turn the brochure around, we'll see something different. You can see that the brochure itself is printed in Sweden in September 1969. And just before I end, I just wanted to quickly just show you this a little bit of this brochure. And this is from 73. This is the full range brochure for 73, and what a wonderful range of cars they had. So if you went in the showroom, you could get a 99 as a 4-door or a 2-door. You could of course looked at the cars we looked at today, the 96 and 95, and you could also buy this unusual car, the Saab Sonnet, which interestingly they refer to this as the Saab 97. I've never heard of that referred to as a 97 before, but there we go. But I just wanted to show you that as what an interesting range of cars they had, and a little bit of a reminder of what amazing rally success the little Saab 96 really had. So there we go, the little Saab 96, certainly right up there with one of my favourite cars, and of course the more practical Saab 95. I really wish I had one of these today, but I'm certainly glad I at least owned one for a short time when I was a teenager. Thank you so much for watching today. If you remember these cars, please do jot that in the comments. Always interesting to see. Many more episodes coming in the near future, so please do like and subscribe if you've not done already, and click the little bell, and that reminds you when a show is on. But like I say, thank you for watching. Please do take care. We'll see you very soon. All the best and goodbye.